Said the building collapsed because intense fires had burned for hours, fed by thousands of gallons of diesel stored in the building. But it said this had only a low probability of occurrence, and more work was needed. Critics point out that was 6 years ago. Shyam Sundar has studied the steel from the Twin Towers. He heads the Tower 7 investigation by the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
We've been at this for a little over 2 years, and doing a 2 or 2.5 year investigation is not at all unusual. That's the same kind of time frame that takes place when we do airplane crash investigation. It takes a few years.
With no steel from Tower 7 to study, investigators have instead made 4 complex computer models, worked out to the finest detail. They're confident their approach will provide the answers.
We're moving as fast as we can. It's a very complex problem. It requires a level of fidelity in the modeling and rigor in the analysis that has never been done before.
Through here, the red area is showing where we had observed structural damage. You see there's a little bit of...
They say the main reason for the collapse were normal office fires, not the diesel as first thought.
You can see here we either have large sagging or buckling occurring in some of these floor beams, and these circles indicate the condition of the connections, where yellow is a partial failure and a pink is a full failure where the entire connection no longer is attached to the column.
Other skyscrapers haven't fully collapsed before because of fire, but what happened on 9/11 was unique. Tower 7 was built over an electricity substation. There were many fires, and crucially, firefighters could not fight the fires in Tower 7. They didn't have enough water and focused on saving lives.
Our working hypothesis now actually suggests that it was normal building fires that were growing and spreading throughout the multiple floors that may have caused the ultimate collapse of the buildings.
Investigators have focused on the east side, where the long floor spans were under most stress. They think fires burnt long enough to weaken and break many of the connections that held the steel structure together. Most susceptible were the thinner floor beams, which required less fireproofing, and the connections between the beams and the columns. As they heated up, the connections failed, and the beams sagged and failed also.
The combination of those two effects makes that column go unstable. When that happens, it leads then to a very large, unsupported column length.
And there's hard physical evidence from another building at the World Trade Center, which helps explain how fire could have caused Tower 7 to collapse.
Several of us went into Building 5, and as we walked along on the floor, we came to the edge of a concrete slab and looked out and were stunned because we saw a major collapse. We saw an interior section of the building that had collapsed simply due to fire.
The steel was heated for hours, weakening it, and the connections sagged and failed. But what about the speed and neat symmetry of the collapse?
The penthouse dropped, and then the entire perimeter of the main building begins and goes straight down in 6.5 seconds, which is virtually free fall speed.
It turns out that when you have connections that essentially don't have strength for the loads that they are being subjected to, and you have this massive failure of a column, it does not take time. The structure has lost all integrity at that point in time.
The final report on 9/11 is promised soon, but there's already a fierce battle on the airwaves and the internet.
Call for quiet on the set.
Live free or die.
Good evening and welcome to Hardfire. I'm Ronald Wick. Tonight,
a community TV station in New York hosts a regular program aimed at debunking conspiracy theories.
They had a big head start. When I got involved in this in April of 2006, there were already over 1 million pages on the internet devoted to 9/11 conspiracy theories.
There is nothing that could falsify their beliefs.
Yeah, it's a religious...
Purely fake. In other words, there is simply no evidence that you could show them.
The entire game is being selective with them. It's picking little anomalies out. Some of them are big anomalies, the way they see them, but not connecting them in any coherent way. There's no coherent hypothesis, and we keep asking for one. How does this fit into any larger theory?
Some of the anomalies have been answered, but the big questions remain. How was a conspiracy carried out? Why? By who? And was it an inside job? The chief counter-terrorism advisor to President Bush on 9/11 was Richard Clarke, and he was with Vice President Dick Cheney in the White House that morning.
People who believe in conspiracy theories, and particularly this one about WTC 7, don't understand government and clearly have never worked in government. Anyone who's ever worked in government will tell you two things. That the government doesn't have the competence to do a large-scale conspiracy like this. And number two, it can't maintain secrecy. There's almost nothing that I know of in 30 years of having top-secret clearances that hasn't come out in the Washington Post and the New York Times.
There can be no whitewash at the White House.
So there's no way this conspiracy of knocking down WTC 7 could have happened.
But he's got 30 years of experience.
I don't care what kind of fucking experience he has, man. I don't care. He's a person in the system. Of course he's going to tell you those kinds of things. You honestly think Richard Clarke is going to come out and say, oh yeah, of course the government was part of it. Oh yeah, of course there's a cover-up. No, he's going to fucking toe the party line and defend the government. He's going to defend his ex-bosses. Come on, man.
The former chief counter-terrorism advisor does not think there's anything mysterious about Tower 7.
I was in the World Trade Center 7 on a number of occasions. This was an office building in downtown New York. The fact that there were some government agencies in there is certainly true, but there are lots of other people in there too, and you could have rented an office or floor, anybody could have.
Every weekend, self-styled 9/11 truthers gather at Ground Zero.
We think we're being lied to, and we can prove that. We're giving out free information about questions of 9/11, and we're giving out free DVDs. This is not a protest, this is a vigil of just giving out free information. Now, we don't come up with any particular theories. We're not going to tell you what happened because we don't know what happened. And I think it's extremely disrespectful from somebody outside of 9/11 to tell you exactly what happened because these questions are unanswered. You know, questions of what happened to World Trade Center 7 are unanswered.
I guess everyone's entitled to their opinion. It kind of angers me because I was there. I've heard people talk about it that come from Cincinnati and California and wherever else they come from. I was here, you weren't. I think they have no respect for all the friends of mine that I lost and all the people that died that day. It's like a slap in their face.
Nearly 3,000 people died on 9/11, including 343 New York firefighters. The man who was in charge that day hopes the official report on Tower 7 will finally end a painful chapter in America's history.
Conspiracies can always be more exciting than the real thing because you can always add to them. It makes for great fiction. And I enjoy great fiction myself, but when it comes to real life, I think we have to know one side of the page is real life, one side of the page is fiction, and draw the line between them and live in the real world and enjoy our fiction as fiction.
Find out more about this programme and others in the Conspiracy Files series at our website bbc.co.uk/conspiracy files. Test yourself on the biggest modern conspiracy stories and tell us what you think.